It's official, people. Maxwell Jacob Friedman is now the longest reigning world champion in all elite wrestling history. MJF defeated Kenny Omega in an excellent main event on Collision, giving me all the feels that MJF may have just earned a new status in the ranks of the company. And yes, by now we all know Max can really wrestle too, but beating Omega in the caliber of match they put on was something many thought would be reserved for a pay-per-view at best and not given to us on free TV. With MJF winning and solidifying his legacy against the best bout machine, it almost felt like there was a shift in the hierarchy of AEW. Those we deem as elite have given the young world champion a seat at the table, and it's deserved, despite it still being unclear as to the future of AEW's resident devil. Allegedly, his contract with the company is still yet to expire in 2024, but while still being on the run of his life, would this pioneer, this trailblazer, this torch bearer leave AEW to sign with the biggest wrestling company in the world? Or would the recognition of making AEW Mount Rushmore and becoming face of the company for years to come satisfy him? Let's take a dive into the AEW World Champion's current run to see why Kenny Omega may have just passed the torch to MJF. MJF's world title run began last year when he defeated Jon Moxley at Full Gear with the help of William Regal. It didn't come as a surprise when MJF turned on Regal, as we all knew Regal was set to leave the company for WWE. The Devil's first title defense came in the form of Ricky Starks at Winter is Coming in 2022, a decent first outing for the new champion that further showcased how talented both superstars are. The first proper feud for MJF in his AEW World Championship reign came against the man who looked up to Regal as a father figure, Bryan Danielson. Bryan wanted to get back at Max for betraying and taking out Regal, even though Regal turned on the Blackpool Combat Club. In usual MJF fashion, Bryan had to go through a series of opponents to get the champion at the Revolution pay-per-view in 2023. This led to that epic 60-minute Iron Man match that further proved that MJF indeed is a generational talent, and even at the age of 27, MJF is capable of hanging with some of the best wrestlers ever. To celebrate this historic win, MJF held his Rebar Mitzvah on Dynamite. It wouldn't be professional wrestling if this wasn't interrupted by the other gentlemen that share the moniker of being the pillars of AEW. Jungle Boy, Sammy Guevara, and Darby Allin. AEW put all four pillars of the company in the same ring, and MJF stood out like a sore thumb over people that they present to us as his peers. After weeks of exchanges between these four, building towards AEW Double or Nothing, it was clear to see that these four are clearly peers in terms of age only, as MJF's ability, especially to build this feud, was way superior. The four-way match at the pay-per-view was a lot of fun, the kind of fun and energetic match you expect from four young superstars. MJF would then go on to defeat legendary New Japan Pro Wrestling poster boy Hiroshi Tanahashi at AEW Forbidden Door, and after this is where things really started picking up in this reign. The beloved Adam Cole had just returned after recovering from a severe concussion that took him out for almost 9 months. After running a program with Chris Jericho, Cole set his sights on the AEW World title. MJF was quick to bring up the fact that Cole was not seen as a top star by Vince McMahon in WWE back in 2021, when Adam was uncertain about remaining with WWE or joining AEW. MJF also blistered Adam by calling him Keith Lee's manager, something that Vince had allegedly planned for Cole's WWE main roster run. These two went on to have an awesome 30-minute time limit draw on an episode of Dynamite. From that point on, the two were paired up in a tag team to participate in a tournament to receive an AEW World Tag Team title match. For weeks, we were given what was called by the fans the brochacho segments, in which Max and Adam Cole tried to form a strong bond, even though it was hard for MJF to do something like this, as he had always been known for backstabbing others. The segments that involved both guys hitting the gym, playing video games, and visiting trampoline parks offered some comic relief in the shape of sports entertainment and what is deemed a professional wrestling product. The two won the tournament but failed to beat FTR for the titles. And just when you thought Max was about to turn on Adam, he embraced him with a warm hug. The devil was softening, even if he still reiterated to the audience he was still their scumbag. MJF gifted Adam Cole another title match at AEW's biggest event ever, All In, which took place in Wembley Stadium in London. 72,000 fans, watched the Brochachos open the pay-per-view, going on to become Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions by defeating Aussie Open on the pre-show, and then later that night, Cole and MJF had a stellar main event match for the world title. The match ended in a draw like their last match, but Adam refused to end the night like that. MJF restarted the match unlike last time when he denied Cole 5 more minutes. MJF ended up winning the match via roll-up. Cole, although frustrated, rekindled with MJF following the conclusion of the match as confetti poured down on them both. Following this, MJF had a brief feud with Samoa Joe, and now MJF is set to defend his World Championship against the rejuvenated Jay White at AEW Full Gear. You can see the level of detail, storytelling and brilliance that has gone into creating this MJF run. But would it be enough for fans if the god of professional wrestling didn't have a say in it? After all, Kenny Omega won the AEW World Championship back in 2020 at Winter is Coming, defeating Jon Moxley and having a 346-day run as champion, defeating contenders such as Rey Fenix, Orange Cassidy, Pac, Jungle Boy and Christian Cage. Kenny would lose his championship to Adam Page at AEW Full Gear in 2021 to culminate another world-class long-term story. When I say Kenny Omega is the face of AEW, I mean it. Alongside Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega was one of the founding fathers of AEW. On top of that, the show always feels more important and a better place when Kenny Omega is booked. Now of course, Chris Jericho had a much bigger name value at the start of AEW, but Omega was coming off a legendary run in New Japan. His matches with Kazuchika Okada alone solidified him as the best wrestler on the planet. He was a top guy in AEW before Dynamite even began. Let's be real, when you think of AEW, you think of Kenny Omega. When you think of dream matches for an ex-WWE guy who joins AEW, you think of Kenny Omega. When you think about the best AEW matches ever, you think about Danielson versus Omega, Adam Page versus Omega, Will Ospreay versus Omega, Moxley versus Omega. Kenny Omega is AEW. Many argued that his match with MJF should have been on pay-per-view or needed more of a build, but their match on Collision made all the sense in the world. Not every feud has to be a long-term story, and this took place amidst the excellent storyline that's going on between MJF and Adam Cole, whilst Jay White also runs around with MJF's world title belt and Samoa Joe and Wardlow are jostling for position. The storytelling was simple. MJF was on the verge of beating Kenny's record as the longest reigning AEW World Champion, and Kenny Omega wanted to stop Maxwell Jacob Friedman before he could have a chance at taking the record. AEW Collision was the perfect time and both men exceeded expectations. A near 30-minute match that was one of the best of both men's AEW careers, especially as a TV main event match. MJF might not have just snatched Kenny's record as the longest reigning AEW World Champion, he might have also snatched his position as the top guy in the company. After the match, both men took to the mics and showed respect for each other. MJF noted how Kenny was there to give him advice when MJF wrestled his first ever match in the Indies, and how AEW would not exist without Kenny Omega. On the other hand, Kenny Omega made it clear that he doesn't have a lot left in him, but was happy to announce that AEW is in the right hands and that MJF is the right guy to take the company forward. Like I've already alluded to, this indeed felt like a passing of the torch moment. The young indie star known as Cody Rhodes' mentee finally walked across the stage and graduated. The potty-mouthed merchant who is now more refined as a babyface champion. The selfish, self-obsessed ingrate is now the leader amongst men and is spearheading a locker room of talents wanting to follow in his footsteps at the tender age of 27. Kenny Omega wasn't blowing smoke up MJF with these comments. Real recognized real, and this really was Kenny Omega offering MJF a seat at the table. But once you're at the top of the mountain, especially as champion, there's only one way you can go, and that's down. I reckon with the newly formed AEW World's End pay-per-view, we may see a multi-man match for the AEW World title involving all of his foes. Maybe something akin to the legendary WWF Armageddon Hell in a Cell match that took place in December 2000. No matter if the future holds an extended stint as AEW World Champion, a lucrative move to WWE, or remaining to be the Torch Bearer in All Elite Wrestling, I think that right now, I couldn't agree more that
nobody is on the level of the devil.